The studio lights glowed with their usual warmth, but something unseen hovered in the air that night. Not hostility, not drama, patience, the kind that waits quietly before snapping. Maher smiled like he was about to lob a soft question across the stage. Meghan Markle returned the smile toward the cameras, the audience, even Bill himself. But behind it flickered something sharp, gone in an instant, like a spark hidden behind glass. Bill seemed to sense it, because tonight wasn't about royalty, or tabloids, or titles. It was about something far more dangerous, something people rarely say out loud. And when Meghan's gaze briefly drifted away from the lens, it became clear this wasn't just another interview. It was a slow-burning confrontation. The set looked familiar, almost comforting. Clean lines, muted blues, and a city skyline glowing behind glass like a promise you weren't entirely sure you could trust. Two chairs faced each other on a circular rug. No desk, no barrier, no distractions. Just posture, distance, and the thin thread of politeness stretched tightly between them. Meghan sat poised, one leg crossed, back straight, hands folded with deliberate ease. She wasn't relaxed, she was rehearsed. The kind of calm that comes from learning the cost of losing control. Across from her, Bill leaned forward slightly, fingers laced together, that half smile in place, the one that suggests the world is absurd and he's already thought of the punchline. The applause faded. The intro music dissolved into silence. For one quiet beat, the studio felt too still, not awkward charged. And then came the first surprise. Bill didn't go where everyone expected. No royal drama, no tabloid bait. Instead, he opened gently. "Meghan, thanks for being here." She nodded. "Thank you for having me." Polite, measured, but her eyes didn't flinch. It felt like a staring contest neither of them intended to lose. Bill tilted his head, tone casual. He talked about how she'd become more than a person, how she'd turned into a symbol. A mirror people project onto. A Rorschach test for public opinion. Meghan's lips tightened, just barely. He acknowledged that women in the spotlight endure this constantly, but then he added the part that mattered. In your case, it went global. Meghan held his gaze. The cameras caught her fingers pressing together, not anxious, not fidgeting, controlled. Bill continued carefully, like someone walking barefoot through shattered glass. He made it clear he wasn't interested in rehashing royal grievances. She'd answered those questions 100 times before. Her shoulders eased slightly, as if she'd braced for impact that hadn't arrived. But then he paused, and that pause changed everything. "There's something else I want to talk about." The words hung there, suspended. Meghan's eyes narrowed just a touch. "Go on." Bill opened his hands, palms up, disarming. He spoke about modern culture's obsession not with facts, but with narratives. That word landed hard. Narratives. Meghan didn't move, but the room seemed to lean forward. Bill nodded, as if introducing the central theme of a documentary. "And I think," he said calmly, "you've become one of the biggest narratives of our time." Her smile returned, but this time it stopped short of her eyes. "That's a very loaded way to describe a person." Bill laughed lightly. He said it wasn't an insult, just reality. "You're a headline with a heartbeat." A ripple of soft laughter moved through the audience. Meghan didn't join it. She tilted her head. "If I'm a narrative," she replied, "it's because others chose to write me that way." Bill's eyes sharpened. "Sure," he said, "but you also publish it. You tell it, you repeat it, you refine it." The temperature in the room dropped, not suddenly but unmistakably. Meghan kept her voice smooth. "I share my truth, and if that bothers people, that says more about them than it does about me." Bill nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for that exact phrase. "Okay," he said, "let's stay there for a moment. My truth." Meghan's jaw tightened for just a second. So subtle most people would miss it, except cameras never miss the important things. Bill leaned back, relaxed. "When you say my truth, do you mean the truth as you lived it?" he asked calmly, "or the truth that affirms you?" There it was. Not an attack, not a provocation, just a clean, precise question sharp enough to pierce the silence. Meghan blinked once. She didn't answer right away. That pause stretched slightly too long for live television, where seconds feel like hours. Finally, she spoke, her voice cooler now. "I mean the truth as I experienced it. And it's interesting that you're already trying to frame that as validation." Bill's smile never left his face, and in that moment, everyone watching knew the real interview had only just begun. "I'm not trying," Bill said calmly. "I'm asking." Meghan's eyes flickered fast, precise, gone before most people could register it. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't interrupt. But the shift was undeniable. Some questions don't arrive naked. They arrive already framed. The audience felt it before they heard it, a low collective "oh" rippling through the room. Bill shrugged, still relaxed. "Fair," he added, "but sometimes people call it framing when they don't like where the question is heading." Meghan didn't change her posture, but the energy tightened. She leaned forward just slightly, closing the space between them. "Let's be clear," she said evenly. "I didn't come here to be dissected in a culture war. I came to talk about my work." Bill nodded without hesitation. "Great. We will. But your work and your story are connected. That's not my opinion. That's your brand." The word brand landed harder than anyone expected. It shouldn't have sounded like a weapon, but it did. Meghan's smile stiffened. "My brand," she repeated quietly. "Is that what you call advocacy now?" Bill raised a hand, calming without retreating. "I'm not saying advocacy is branding. I'm saying in 2025, everything becomes marketing, even sincerity." Her eyes locked onto his. "That's a very cynical worldview." Bill grinned. "I host a show. Cynicism comes with the chair." Meghan released a short breath, not quite a laugh. "And compassion doesn't?" Bill's eyebrows lifted. "See? Now we're getting somewhere." She adjusted the cuff of her blouse. A small movement, but it looked deliberate, like tightening armor. Bill leaned in again, voice steady, friendly, and quietly dangerous. "Here's what fascinates me," he said. "You say you want privacy, yet you produce content about your life. You say you want peace, yet you engage in conflict. You say you want to move on, yet you keep returning to the same story." Her expression didn't crack, but her eyes sharpened, like glass catching light. "You're doing that thing again," she said. Bill tilted his head. "What thing? Turning a human being into a contradiction for entertainment?" Bill didn't blink. "Is it entertainment or accountability?" The audience murmured. Meghan leaned back slowly now. The calm remained, but it no longer looked like poise. It looked like restraint. "Accountability for what?" she asked carefully. "For speaking? For existing?" Bill's tone stayed measured. "For monetizing grievance." Silence fell, not total, but heavy enough to register. Meghan's face went still. She didn't blink. And that's when the room understood this interview had crossed a line of no return. Bill hadn't insulted her. He hadn't raised his voice. He'd simply said one sentence that forced a decision. Deflect, confront, or something else entirely. She chose something else. She smiled. "Bill," she said softly, "you're very comfortable calling a woman's pain grievance." Bill's smile thinned. "I'm comfortable calling anyone's pain a business model if they sell it." She held that smile a beat too long. Then she looked past him toward the skyline, the lights, the camera, and for the first time, her voice carried something unpolished. "Then maybe," she said, "you should ask yourself why people like you keep buying it." Bill's eyes flickered. Not anger, not fear. Interest, the kind a chess player feels when the board suddenly changes. He nodded once. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's talk about who's buying what." Her smile disappeared. Her jaw set. Somewhere off camera, a producer shifted in their seat, not because anything had exploded, but because the fuse had just been lit, and no one knew how long it was. When Bill said those words, the temperature dropped. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough that everyone felt it. Even the city lights behind the glass looked sharper now, less forgiving. Meghan didn't respond right away. That silence wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. She uncrossed her legs and crossed them again, slower this time, reclaiming space. When she spoke, her voice was calm, almost gentle, but reinforced with steel. "You keep using words like selling and buying," she said, "as if telling your story automatically cheapens it." Bill nodded once. Not automatically. Repeatedly. Another ripple moved through the audience. Not laughter, not applause. Awareness. Meghan's lips curved slightly. "Interesting," she said, "because when men write memoirs, they're brave. When women speak out, it's monetization." Bill didn't rush her. He leaned back, folding one leg over the other, letting her finish. That restraint made her words hit harder. "I walked away from an institution built on silence," she continued. "I chose transparency, and somehow that's become a crime." Bill exhaled, half a laugh. "No one said crime. I said pattern." Her eyes flashed. "Patterns exist because systems do." Bill tilted his head. "Sure, but systems don't force Netflix deals." There it was, the second needle, deeper this time. Meghan leaned forward, her voice sharpening. So now we're pretending you wouldn't take one? Bill smiled, unfazed. I already did. I just don't call it therapy. A few audience members laughed. This time, Meghan heard it. Her shoulders stiffened. That's a cheap line. Bill raised an eyebrow. Was it wrong? She straightened fully. The diplomacy was gone. This was her public voice, now controlled, assertive, forged under pressure. What you're doing, she said, is trivializing trauma because it makes you uncomfortable. And in that moment, it was clear. This conversation was no longer about interviews, narratives, or even truth. It was about who gets to define pain and who profits when it's questioned. Bill shook his head slowly. No, he said, measured. I'm questioning how it's presented. Meghan let out a short, dismissive breath. By who? She asked. By you. Bill didn't hesitate. By someone who doesn't profit from the monarchy or from tearing it down. The line hit harder than expected, maybe harder than intended, or maybe exactly as intended. Meghan's eyes narrowed. You really think this is about profit? Bill chose his words carefully. I think outrage has become currency, and some people are very skilled at spending it. For the first time, Meghan cut him off. That's rich, she snapped, coming from a man who built his career dissecting other people's lives from a safe distance. A sharp gasp rippled through the audience. Bill didn't flinch, but his smile dimmed slightly. I've never claimed to be a victim, he said evenly. That's the difference. Meghan laughed once, sharp and humorless. No, you just claim to be above it. Bill leaned forward now, mirroring her posture. No, he said, I claim to be honest. The distance between them vanished not physically, but rhetorically. This was no longer abstract. It was personal. Meghan's voice dropped. Honest or detached? Bill met her stare. Detached enough to ask questions without crying foul. She opened one hand, palm up. So empathy is foul now? Bill answered instantly. Empathy without self-reflection is indulgence. This time, the audience reaction was louder, a low rumble rolling through the studio like distant thunder. Meghan's composure fractured, just barely, but enough to see if you were watching closely. Her breathing quickened. Her words came faster. You sit there, she said. Comfortable, wealthy, untouched by tabloids that rip apart your body, your marriage, your motherhood. Bill interrupted her gently but firmly. I've been sued, fired, protested, canceled, and threatened. She waved it off. That's not the same. His eyes hardened. Pain isn't a competition. For half a second, Meghan looked frozen, like she might say something she couldn't take back. The camera caught her swallowing, resetting. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, but strained. You don't get to define my experience. Bill nodded. True, but I do get to question how it's packaged. Her smile returned thin, brittle. You're obsessed with packaging. Bill shrugged. Because the wrapping keeps changing, but the product stays the same. She leaned back, arms crossing loosely, not defensive, but closed. And what exactly is the product, Bill? He didn't look away. Victimhood with a production budget. The studio went dead silent. Even the skyline behind the glass seemed to dim. Meghan's eyes flicked briefly toward the producers, the cameras, the unseen audience beyond the walls, then back to him. That's cruel, she said quietly. Bill didn't raise his voice. That somehow made it worse. Cruelty, he replied, is using suffering as armor. Her jaw tightened. You don't know what I've lost. Bill nodded once. No, but I know what you've gained. That was the moment the line disappeared completely. Meghan leaned forward abruptly. You think this is a game? Bill's tone stayed level. I think it's a performance. Her eyes burned. Then stop watching. His lips pressed into something like a smile, thin, unkind. I can't. You keep selling tickets. The audience erupted some applause, some shock, some visible discomfort. A producer's voice crackled faintly in Bill's earpiece, urging caution. It didn't matter. The moment had already escaped control. Meghan's hands unclenched slowly. When she spoke again, her voice was low and dangerous. You think you're brave for saying this? She said. But you're just another man dismissing a woman because she won't suffer quietly. Bill answered without pause. And you're just another powerful person pretending criticism is oppression. The room felt like it might fracture. Meghan stared at him, breathing hard. You invited me here to humiliate me. Bill shook his head. No, I invited you here to talk. She laughed bitterly. This isn't a conversation. It's an ambush. Bill leaned back, folding his hands. Only if you expected applause. The sentence lingered, heavy, unavoidable. Meghan looked down for the briefest instant, then back up, eyes blazing. "You know what?" she said. "I don't need this." Bill raised an eyebrow. "Need what?" "This smug little exercise where you pretend neutrality while sharpening knives." His voice softened. Not apologetic, just calm. "If questions feel like knives," he said, "maybe the story isn't as solid as you think." Meghan inhaled sharply. Her leg bounced once, control slipping, just for a moment. The audience could feel it now. This wasn't simmering anymore. It was boiling. And as the red light above the camera stayed on, still recording, still watching, everyone in that studio understood one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened next, there was no way to edit the tension out. This was no longer a battle of ideas. It had become a test of stamina, a waiting game, and everyone in the room could feel it. Someone, sooner or later, was going to break the stillness. The silence that followed Bill's last words wasn't empty. It was packed tight. Packed with unspoken rebuttals, with camera operators ready to zoom, with producers frozen behind the glass. Meghan didn't move. Neither did Bill. Behind them, the city lights burned steadily, like witnesses who'd seen confrontations like this before and already knew how they usually ended. Bill finally spoke again, but not with an attack. "Let's reset," he said evenly. "This doesn't have to be a fight." Meghan let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "You crossed that line 10 minutes ago." Bill nodded once. "Fair. Then let's at least be honest." Her eyes lifted sharply. That word mattered. He leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on his knees. His tone shifted, less sharp now, more precise. "You say you want to be heard. I believe you, but you also want control over how you're questioned. And those two things don't coexist." Meghan's fingers pressed together. "I want respect." Bill met her gaze. "Respect doesn't mean immunity." A low murmur moved through the audience. Meghan turned slightly in her chair, angling away, not retreating, recalibrating. "You're acting like I walked in here demanding praise," she said. "I didn't. I came to talk about how public scrutiny affects mental health." Bill nodded. "And then you monetized it." Her head snapped back toward him. "There it is again." "Because it matters," Bill replied calmly. "If you become the face of a cause, people will question the business model." Her voice hardened. "So compassion needs a disclaimer now." "No," Bill said. "Influence does." She shook her head slowly. "You're obsessed with power." Bill smiled faintly, only when it pretends not to have any. That line cut deep. The audience felt it. Meghan felt it more. "You have no idea what it's like," she said, her voice rising despite herself, "to have every word dissected, every breath weaponized." Bill didn't argue. "I know what it's like to be criticized." "That's not the same," she shot back. Bill raised a finger slightly, not accusatory, just exact. "No, and neither is being a duchess." A sharp intake of breath rippled across the room. Meghan's eyes darkened. "You don't get to use my title like a joke." Bill didn't blink. "Then stop using it as armor." The producer's voice crackled faintly in Bill's earpiece. "Careful." It didn't matter. The train was already moving. Meghan leaned forward now, both hands braced on her knees. "You think I enjoy this?" Bill shrugged. "I think you're very good at it." Her voice dropped, dangerous now. "You're reducing my life to optics." Bill answered just as quietly. "You're presenting it that way." The audience shifted. Someone whispered, "Oh, wow." Another laughed nervously, then stopped. Meghan straightened, smoothing her jacket with deliberate control. "Let me ask you something, Bill." He nodded. "Go ahead." "Do you think people should stay silent when institutions harm them?" "No," Bill said instantly. "Then why am I punished for speaking?" "You're not punished for speaking," he replied. "You're questioned for profiting." Her jaw tightened. "So the rule is, speak but don't succeed?" Bill shook his head. "Speak but don't confuse success with moral authority." That one stung. Meghan's breath quickened. She tried to mask it with a smile, but it came out tight. "You're projecting," she said. "You resent people who don't play by your rules." Bill responded without heat. "I resent people who rewrite the rules and still demand applause." The audience split, some clapped. Others sat rigid, uneasy. Meghan gestured toward the crowd. "You hear that? This is what happens when nuance gets replaced by cynicism." Bill followed her gesture, then looked back at her. "This is what happens when criticism gets labeled cruelty." She scoffed. "You call this criticism?" "Yes." Bill said. Her disbelief was visible. You've spent 20 minutes questioning my integrity. Bill corrected her gently. I questioned your framing. She laughed sharply. That's semantics. Bill smiled thinly. So is my truth. That did it. Meghan's composure bent at not broken, but visibly strained. Her voice rose, still controlled, but shaking at the edges. You don't get to mock the language people use to survive. Bill leaned back, hands open. I'm not mocking survival. I'm mocking sanctimony. The room went quiet again. Meghan stared at him, eyes glossy, not with tears, but with fury. You think you're smarter than this? Bill's reply was soft. I think I'm less invested in being liked. The audience laughed, this time louder. And that laughter didn't end the tension. It sealed it. Meghan heard the laughter and something inside her shifted. Not anger, resolve. You invited me here, she said slowly, each word measured. Not to listen, but to perform. Bill shook his head. I invited you here to answer. Her voice sharpened. On your terms. He met her stare without blinking. On reality. She leaned back, arms crossing tightly over her chest. This wasn't posture anymore. It was armor. Do you know what your problem is? She asked. Bill waited. You confuse detachment with wisdom. And you, Bill replied evenly, confuse emotion with evidence. The words settled between them, heavy and unmoving. Meghan exhaled through her nose, eyes flicking briefly toward the cameras before returning to him. This, she said, is why people don't trust men like you. You talk about pain without ever sitting in it. Bill's reply was calm, unyielding. And this is why people question people like you. You sit in pain and never leave it. A few audible gasps escaped the audience. Meghan's hands dropped to her sides. Her shoulders squared. That's enough, she said quietly. Bill blinked once. Enough of what? Enough of this, she replied. This condescension disguised as curiosity. Bill nodded slowly. If that's how you feel, we can move on. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't get to light the fire and then call for calm. Bill leaned forward again. Then tell me what you want. She stared at him in silence, long enough for the cameras to tighten their shot. Then, finally, I want accountability. Bill didn't hesitate. From whom? Her answer came instantly. From people who profit by tearing others down. Bill followed without pause. Including yourself? The studio froze. Meghan's mouth opened, then closed. Her chest rose and fell. She looked away just for a second. When she turned back, the debate was gone. A decision had taken its place. You know what? She said, pushing up just enough that her chair shifted audibly. I'm done being dissected for sport. Bill looked up at her, calm. No one's forcing you to stay. She met his gaze, eyes burning. I know. The red light above the camera stayed on. When Meghan stood fully, the room felt smaller, not because of her height, but because of the gravity she carried with her. Her chair scraped softly against the floor. Audible, but not disruptive. Bill didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He simply watched her like someone who'd seen the storm gathering long before the clouds arrived. This, Bill said quietly, almost regretful, is exactly what I mean. When the questions stop being flattering, you leave. Meghan turned toward him slowly. The smile was gone now. No performance left to protect. You didn't ask questions, she said. You staged an ambush. Bill tilted his head. You've been interviewed by tougher. That landed harder than any insult. The audience murmured again, uneven, uncertain, divided. Meghan gestured toward the cameras. This is what people don't see. The baiting, the rewriting of motives, the assumption that when a woman speaks passionately, she must be manipulating something. Bill answered evenly. Or maybe people are responding to patterns. Her jaw tightened. You keep saying people like you're not leading them. Bill didn't deny it. I say out loud what others think silently. She let out a sharp laugh. And you call that bravery? I call it honesty, Bill replied. Meghan stepped away from the chair now, positioning herself between it and the camera. No longer seated, no longer a guest, no longer playing along. You want honesty? She said. Fine. Bill nodded. Please. Her voice dropped, controlled, vibrating underneath. You don't like me because I don't fit your worldview. I don't behave the way women are expected to when they talk about trauma. I don't apologize enough. I don't stay grateful. She paused. And that bothers people like you. Bill inhaled slowly before replying with surgical calm. No, What bothers me is when accountability gets replaced with accusation. She shook her head. You decided who I am, Bill answered, and you decided who's allowed to disagree with you. The producer's voice cut in again, sharper now. We're running long. Wrap if needed. Bill ignored it. Let me ask you one last thing, he said. If you're always misunderstood, always attacked, always the victim, at what point do you consider the possibility that you're contributing to the friction? The silence that followed was brutal. Not dramatic, not explosive, just heavy enough to make everyone watching lean closer because whatever came next wouldn't be forgotten. Meghan held his gaze without blinking. No smile, no deflection, just stillness. Then she spoke, her voice low and precise. That question, she said, is the problem. Bill leaned back slightly. Because it assumes agency, he said. Because it assigns blame, she shot back. Because it implies responsibility, Bill replied. Her breath caught subtle, but sharp enough for the microphones to pick it up. This, she said, is why people like you are dangerous. You disguise judgment as logic. Bill didn't look at her now. He looked directly into the camera. And this, he said calmly, is why conversations collapse when emotion replaces answers. That was it. Meghan stepped back, one hand lifting instinctively, as if to stop something already finished. I'm done, she said. I didn't come here to be lectured. Bill looked up at her. You came here to be challenged. She shook her head. No, I came here to speak. And you did, Bill replied. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned toward the exit. The audience reacted instantly. Gasps, scattered applause, stunned silence. A few people stood. Others stayed seated, unsure whether to clap or simply watch. Bill remained where he was. Meghan, he said, not raising his voice. You're welcome to stay. She stopped, but didn't turn around. I don't need permission, she said. Then she walked. The camera followed just long enough to catch the door closing behind her. Not slammed, not dramatic. Final. The studio fell into a stunned quiet. Bill exhaled slowly and turned back to the camera. Well, he said evenly, that's one way to end a conversation. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. He adjusted his posture, composed now, but visibly sharpened. This is why dialogue matters, he continued. Not comfort, not applause, dialogue. He paused. And sometimes, he added, walking away says more than staying ever could. The red light dimmed. The credits rolled. And before the broadcast even ended, the internet was already ablaze. Some called Meghan brave, others called her evasive. Many replayed the final exchange again and again, not because of what was said, but because of what went unanswered. Some conversations don't end with clarity. They end with a walkout. And if you enjoy high-tension interviews, unfiltered confrontations, and moments when everything goes off script, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the next conversation might end the same way, or explode even faster.